What is and how does free will come into play?
I think that if you're growing an apple seed into the ground, you cannot grow bananas there, right? It's going to be apple. But through your free will, your dedication, and your techniques, you might grow it much better than other people. You might be able to avoid different mistakes. You will know when to water them, when to nourish them, and in what season you need to do what. And so I think that's the free will.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have an interesting fellow on the show today. Letao Wang is a professional astrologist, tarot and numerology specialist, and spiritual counselor. I'm interested in learning how Letao uses these ancient methodologies to advise his clients and help them navigate their life's journey. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go talk with Letao. Letao, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted to have you, and thank you for being up in the middle of the night. I know you're in Hong Kong, and you just told me it's 2 a.m. there, so God bless you for joining us at this early hour of the morning.
Thank you very much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
You bet. I was telling him before we started recording, I said, good thing you're a guy, because, girls got to boof and poof to get ready to be on camera. And you're just obviously naturally handsome. So,
thank you.
You're in good shape. What's spiritual counseling?
It's basically a combination of two my favorite things. One side is my own spiritual journey, about discovering the mystical side of the world, about our people, and the other thing is counseling, which I spend a lot of time studying and learning and trying to master. And so, usually, people do one of them, but for me, it's I want to put them together so that I will be able to do something that I really feel I'm called to do. Yeah.
Were you a therapist before you added the spiritual component?
Actually, it's the other way around.
Oh, okay.
So I started my spiritual career first. Then, about 4 years after I started my business, I realized that what I really found valuable in my reading session is the therapeutic value. It's the counseling part that my clients really loved. Instead of just telling them about their future. And so I went back to grad school to do my second master program in counseling. Then I got my certification in counseling. So it's kind of interesting here, because usually people would say that, are you a counselor first, and you studied, the esoteric stuff. But for me, it's the other way around.
I think it's fascinating that Spirit led you to go get those advanced degrees in counseling. Obviously, you were led to do that because it's no easy feat, and it takes a lot of effort and time and energy and expense, I'm sure, on your part. And how fascinating that Spirit was like, hey, go become a certified counselor with the education and everything.
Yeah, I think, of course, people who work in in this industry, right? Whether you're a counselor, you're a psychologist, or similar, occupations. To be honest, I think we usually have a natural flair in this, right? And we know, what is about, bringing the therapeutic value to a session. But at the end of the day, there is the academic or the scientific foundation there. So for me, it's kind of interesting, because when I was going through my master program, I realized that a lot of things that we were learning in, for example, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, I was already doing them. So they were not foreign to me. The thing that I realized was, now I'm learning it from a more theory-based way. But a lot of the things that, our professors were teaching, I was thinking, okay, I was doing that in my session. Oh yeah, I was doing that in my session. So it's kind of interesting, yeah, to just to bring a little bit more theory and understanding to that.
Well, and that just gives you credibility too, with all that alphabet soup at the end of your name, right? All those letters with your different degrees and everything. What initially led you to astrology and tarot and numerology?
Um, so that was wow. We have to go all the way back to when I was in my early 20s, I think. Yeah. Um, I think compared to a lot of people working in the, you know, working as a reader, or maybe they're spiritual masters, they usually have their own spiritual awakening quite early. Yeah, when they were like 9 or 10 years old, they say they felt something. But for me, it was really late. I knew nothing about astrology. Not until the age of 23, actually, because I grew up in a very traditional Chinese family. And all my education was about, the traditional things that a Chinese kid is supposed to do to bring glory to the family. So,
Like what? Tell us what some of those things are.
well, so for example, traditionally speaking, yeah, I mean, you're supposed to choose one of the three occupations, which means that you are a good son, and you are bringing glamour to the family, and your parents will be proud of you. And those three occupations are either you are a doctor, or you are a lawyer, or at least you need to work for a very famous investment bank.
No
So you
pressure.
Oh yeah, so you wear a beautiful suit every day and that nice a necktie, and you make six-figure salaries, right? And then your parents be like, oh, our son works for, I don't know, when I was in school, the most famous one was Merrill Lynch. Now they were part of Bank of America, of course, right? And so that was the so-called wow, he made it, that kind of thing. And so my education, my parents actually spent a lot of money for my education, actually. So I understand that most kids in the U.S., right, they usually have debt. After they graduate from university, they're so debt, right, and it might take them 30 years to pay back their student loan. But for me, I had no debt at all because my parents are paying all of those things. And because that's how much they wanted me to be glamorous, let's put it this way, because I'm the only child in the family. So until the age of 20, because I was doing my first master program in Sydney, Australia. And at that time, I really wanted to work. My goal at that time, of course, it was a dream. I wanted to work for the United Nations as an SI interpreter. So I don't know if you have ever seen the movie, The Interpreter by Nicole Kidman. It's an old movie.
I don't think so. Should we watch it? Is it good?
I really liked it because that's really related to what I wanted to do at that time. So basically, what you would do is in the big hall, right, you will have all the politicians and world leaders sitting in the middle, right, and they're discussing things, and everyone has a headset and they have a microphone. And then whatever they're saying as an interpreter, you'll be listening to them in the glass room, basically, and you're interpreting at the same time. So that's called a simultaneous interpreting. And I really wanted to do that. So I was doing my first master program in interpreting. But the more I delved into that, the less I became interested in it, even though, my whole tertiary education was about translation and interpreting. And it was just a very strange day. I was ambling down the street with a friend, and we encountered this very weird shop in Sydney, in Newtown. We walked in, and there was a guy sitting in the shop, and he said, "Do you want a reading?" I didn't even know what a reading was, and I was so broke as a student, right? And I said, I only have $20. That's it, right? If you can do a reading, sure, I'll try it, right? So he did a reading for me, right? But long story short, he really opened the door for me. He led me into this whole new world, that there's something more than just what I know. And eventually he actually became my first astrology teacher. And so that was really the beginning of my journey. And slowly, I became more and more interested in astrology, and I studied a lot more, either with him, with other astrology teachers, and also just by myself. But I never really had the courage to see this as a career, because again, I had all these expectations from my parents about what I need to achieve. So I worked for a big bank, for about 4 to 5 years after I graduated from the first grad school that I went to in Sydney, and around the age of 29, which really coincided with my first Saturn return. And that's what the reality hit me, that I can't live my life like this pretending to be a banker. I need to, I need a change. And so that's how I started this as a career. Yeah.
All right, that's a lot to unpack. I got several questions for you here.
Yeah.
First of all, did you grow up in Hong Kong?
No, I didn't actually. Yeah. So I grew up in mainland China.
Okay. And I assume other Westerners believe that a lot of this stuff originated in Asia, and that it's just all part, like the whole feng shui thing and the, astrology thing. And although astrology has been used all over the world for a long time, but the whole energy thing and the ancestors and the spirits and all that jazz is very Asian to me. Asia, actually, and also India, too, has a lot of it there. In my mind, it predates the Western civilization. I don't know if that's true, but I know feng shui, for instance, is thousands of years old and is practiced a lot in Asia. So that's number one. Your English is amazing.
Thank you. I try.
So good job on that. Did you learn that in school in China?
Well, just,
or did you learn it in Australia?
Well, I actually studied English in Japan. That's a really...
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Of course you did. All right. That's a different topic. The other thing that's interesting to me is you say that you were wanting to be an interpreter, and I know somebody who was a Russian interpreter. And when President Reagan was in the White House, she was Nancy Reagan's interpreter in Russian. Yeah. And so she lived in DC and did all that stuff. She's retired now. But you wanted to be an interpreter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What are you doing now? You're interpreting all this stuff. Astrology, tarot, numerology. You're interpreting the information you're getting from spirit using those methodologies and helping people with it. So you're doing exactly what you were being led to do. You're just doing a different flavor of it. You're in the woo-woo space doing it instead of in the UN. And in the UN, there's lots of woo-woo that goes on there too. Look at all that negotiation and stuff. People just aren't aware of it.
Yeah,
right?
So absolutely. Yeah.
I find that fascinating. I'm a businesswoman and an inventor with a communications degree. And I think, what the heck? Communications degree didn't do jack for me. Although, what do? I communicate with spirit. I'm communicating with people all over the world. I don't remember anything that I learned. That was a million years ago. And, I just wanted to graduate. Thank you, Loudy. Get me out of here. I'm ready to go get a job, but I knew I needed the degree. So you and I both are using what we wanted to do and what we trained to do, just in perhaps an unconventional way. And I think that's so fun to explore how spirit leads us in directions that we haven't even imagined. And then when we follow where we're being led, it can unfold.
Yeah.
Why do you combine tarot, astrology, and numerology to help your clients? And please, for those that are watching and listening that aren't familiar really with what all these things are, they've heard the words, but they don't know what it is. Please explain what those three methods are and how you combine them. Why do you combine them?
So I think, the foundation is really astrology, because that's first of all, that's what I spend most of my time studying and learning. My first teacher was an astrologer as well. Astrology basically is this whole study is about through looking at the position of the planets in the sky, and we're seeing that as a reflection of the Earth, basically. So the foundation of astrology is called as above, so below, as within, so without. And so when the client is asking questions about certain things, we're looking at where the stars and the planet are located in the sky, and through understanding the relationships between or among different planets, and we are drawing answers there to answer the client's question. Sometimes
are you looking at the positions of the stars and the planets currently when they're asking the question, or are you looking at them from when they were born, or both?
Both, yeah. So depending on what they ask, right? If they're asking something about their own, let's say their own psychology and the way they think, the way they feel, it has a lot to do with their own birth chart. And in astrology, we call this a natal chart. So the sky, right? If you take a snapshot of the sky when they were born, and that's their life, basically. But if a client is asking something, let's say, I'm having an interview next week. Am I gonna get the job? And you look at the planetary location at that time when they were asking that question, and that is called horary astrology. It's a different field in Western astrology. Actually, one of my teachers was a horary astrology master. His name is Anthony Lewis. He actually published a book. I think it's called Simple and Simple and Quick Horary Astrology in the States.
How do you spell horary?
Horary, Horary.
Okay, I never heard of it.
Yeah,
it's Western astrology versus Eastern astrology.
Western.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating, actually. So in Eastern esoteric studies, we have something similar, yeah. And in Chinese, we call that 奇门遁甲, but it's basically the same thing as horary astrology. So we're doing similar things. We're looking at the position of the stars, the planet at the time that the client is asking the question. And then, usually it will give us a gist about whether that answer is a yes or no, or sometimes it will be able to give us the exact timing of that question. So it's kind of interesting, but it's also a very complicated study, right? Because the client can ask anything. I lost my key. Where's my key? I can't find it. Okay, let's look at the planet and decide where the key is. Things like that. So one of the biggest...
The planet's alignment gives you the answer?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
And actually, lost and found is a very common question that people ask for horary astrology. But long story short, right? Come back to the question that you had earlier. And so astrology was the foundation actually for me at the very beginning. And slowly I started tarot because actually tarot or mythology, all these kind of things are all associated with astrology. I don't know how much you have studied the tarot or played with the cards.
Not at all. So explain to those that are like me, and I mean, I know what tarot cards are, but I've never used them.
I see. Okay. So each card actually is associated with a planet or a constellation sign in the sky. And so for people who actually have a very strong foundation in astrology, it's very easy for them to understand tarot. They understand the archetypes of each card, basically. And both tarot and astrology are about archetypes.
What's an archetype?
Well, archetype is a little bit like a certain, you can see that as like a model of a certain energy. So as an example, let's say we're looking at the card of Empress, this card in tarot. And when we're looking at this card Empress and specifically in a reading with a client, we're not really saying there are an Empress, but Empress represents this specific archetype that is a mother, that is nurturing, that is loving, that symbolizes abundance. And when you use that to answer a client question, for example, if they are asking about a health question, then the Empress is talking about the prosperity of your body. It's talking about the comfort, the comfortable feelings that you have, whether you're eating well. Because you can imagine a mother's energy is she wants to feed you. She wants to make sure that you are not cold, right? You're eating well, you're sleeping well, and things like that. So I call this archetype. And so the 78 tarot cards is about the 78 archetypes that we are learning.
I'm laughing with the Empress thing because I often will have, it's always women. I'll never hear this from a man. They always say, okay, tell me about my past lives. Was I like a European princess or was I an emperor? Was I a duchess or a countess or something? It's so funny. I'll say, okay, we'll see if you wore tiaras in any of your past lives, which is hilarious. But I hear that a lot, believe it or not. So I'm chuckling to myself when you of course are picking the Empress card as an example. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's about that, right? And numerology is a little bit different, even though we also connect numerology with astrology. So I would say astrology is really the foundation there. It's like the root of the tree, right? And then you grow the tree, then you see there are different branches, right? So there is numerology, there's tarot, there is mythology, everything else that comes out of that. But for me, astrology is really the foundation.
And I know that there are different kinds of astrology, tarot, and numerology. How did you choose which ones, or were you just led to whoever the teacher was and that's what you learned? How do you discern, okay, this one really is the one that works best for me? And is one more efficient or effective or more validatable than another one?
So astrology is more standard, I think. Yeah, the Western astrology is the Western tropical system. There are other systems as well, but usually when you study astrology, you would study the basic system there. So that's quite universal, actually, I think, unless you're doing Vedic. Vedic is the Indian one, right? Or you're studying the Chinese one. So that's a different ballgame. But Western astrology is quite standard in that way. And then the house systems actually, this can vary, right? Depending on who your teacher is. Some people will use the whole sign house system, and some people will use different house systems. But that doesn't really matter actually, because it's like 80% similar. Tarot is different because you are right in that there are hundreds of types of tarot cards out there. But the original tarot card is called the Rider-Waite. And usually as a tarot student, you will study with that deck, with the Rider-Waite system and the artwork, everything, because that's really the root. And you will learn a lot of the symbolism actually from that tarot deck. And when you become more, let's say, proficient with the 78 archetypes, then you can try other things. I mean, these days, even modern days, right? Different artists create their own tarot decks, but all the tarot decks have to follow the same system, meaning that there are 78 cards in the deck. We have 22 major arcana and 56 minor arcana. So the artwork might be very different. They might be very flexible. Some of them are like oil painting. Some of them are, color pencil, things like that. But eventually the system has to be the same. If it's not the 78 cards, then you can't call that tarot.
Okay, I got a couple questions about that. And then let's move on to numerology. My first question is, where'd that originate? And how do you know it's an actual valid? So, you could have 78 cards with all kinds of different things on them. How do you know that that's a real tarot deck? Number one. And number two, is there a technique that you're taught when you're learning the tarot of, do you have the client shuffle the cards? Do you shuffle them? Because, how do you know that you're not getting the same cards from the person before? And okay, so I'm playing skeptic here. How do I know that you're not laying down the same cards as you did with the person that was before me, or you do that with everybody? How does that work?
So it depends on the reader. Different people have their own practice, whatever they feel comfortable with. For me, I never pull the cards from the deck. The clients would do that.
So you fan them out, like you shuffle the cards and then you fan them out, or you have the client shuffle the cards?
I shuffle the cards, and after shuffling, I fan them out, and I'll tell the clients, you need to pull 3 cards, 5 cards, 10 cards from whatever in front of you. So take a deep breath, think about the questions you want to ask. Whenever you're ready, let's go.
And then what happens with a client that's on Zoom?
So then, in that case, I would not use tarot. I would use a different kinds of cards. Yeah, because tarot 78 cards is very difficult for clients to see all of them through a camera, right? And then pick cards. So usually on Zoom session, we have to do things in a different way.
Okay. All right. We'll come back to tarot in a minute. Tell me and everybody listening and watching, tell us about numerology.
Numerology is kind of interesting because all about the spiritual meaning that each number carries with it. So basically, you're studying the number from number 1 to number 9, and so those are the basic numbers in numerology. And there is also the master numbers 11, 22, and 33. Some people argue that there's more. They will say 44 or 55, but basically, if you study, read most, let's say, numerology books, existing ones, written by credible authors, we're talking about the 9 single-digit numbers and the 3 master numbers there. And we believe that numbers, each number carries a very specific spiritual meaning with them. Yeah. So, for example, let's say number 1. 1 is talking about, first of all, number 1 is really the beginning of the number sequence. And so number 1 naturally carries a feeling of initiation. You're starting something. Something is just sprouting and is ready to grow. And number 1 is also about independence when you think about the number, because number 1 has nothing to do with depending on other people. Number 1 is about courage. Number 1 and also is to deal with the constellation sign of Aries, because Aries is the first sign in the astrological wheel. So there are a lot of keywords related to number 1. So people who, let's say they were born with the life path number 1, their life path need them to be enterprising, need them to be independent, needs them to be bold, and needs them to achieve things through understanding their own talent and their own purpose and things like that.
And so how do you access the numbers that you're using in a consult? Do you like spin a wheel, like a roulette wheel? Do you throw a couple of dice and, whatever the number is that the dice land on?
There are so many different, so numbers actually exist everywhere in the reading. You don't really just throw a dice, right, and see and check the number. First of all, their birthday will tell you a lot about their numbers, right? So that's how you calculate the life path number and their purpose. And then in the reading, when you lay out the cards, then this, again, is the reason why I'm saying they're all related. When you look at their astrology, you're looking at the planet, where the planets are located on their astrological chart. And the astrological wheel is divided into 12 houses. Then that also gives you a strong number information. Also, at the same time, when you're doing tarot with clients, each card carries a number there as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, in the 12 houses, that's 12 sides of the Zodiac too, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so in the 12 months of the year.
Absolutely. So number is really everywhere. And so sometimes clients even bring out this information themselves. They will say, I really feel my life has a lot to do, for example, with the number 4, right? And you ask them, why would you say so? And they will say, first of all, I was born, for example, 1994, April the 4th. The house that, I spent, my entire childhood in, with my parents, and the address was number 44. Okay, on whatever street, right? So somehow they will feel that their life, the certain number always follows them, right? And so then then they'll ask you, why do you think so? Why am I always associated with number 4? And then you will use the knowledge in numerology, and then combine that with the reading, and you will see all that's the reason why this makes sense to them, etc., etc. Yeah.
All right. So do you ever have clients where their numbers and their birth chart and their all that jazz, and I want to get into the birth chart thing here in a minute, but and all of that stuff, and you're putting all this stuff together, and you think, oh, I'm so sorry, you're just screwed. Because of, of your birth date and your astrological side and your numerology thing. I mean, you're just destined for a life that's going to be doom and gloom. Do you ever have that, or does everybody have redeeming qualities in their numbers and their charts and all that jazz?
I actually don't really believe in that, to be honest. When you look at a chart, you know that some people probably have had a very difficult childhood. You can tell that possibly they have had difficult relationships with their parents. Possibly there was a lot of emotional challenges that they will have to work on, that they will have to overcome. That, yes, you see that. And but does that mean, they're doomed? I don't really believe so. I believe that every soul came to this lifetime to overcome certain things. Some people might have more challenges to overcome. Some people have less. Some people maybe, it's true that some people, they naturally just have an easier life, and we don't deny that. But we all have our lessons to learn. And in the session, when we're looking at their natal chart in astrology, specifically, let's say emotional challenges, we're looking at the position of their moon. And so we're studying, because the moon is a very complex planet actually in astrology. And so we're studying that. We're looking at their childhood. We're looking at their parents, parental relationships. We're looking at their emotional reactions in their personal relationships with their friends, things like that. Yeah, and that gives us a lot of information about how to help them go through the healing journey.
Right. Well, I find that to be the case too. And when I communicate with Spirit, and I've heard this a bazillion times, is we all choose our parents. We choose when we're born, where we're born, to whom we're born, so our lives can have a trajectory that will allow us to explore and experience whatever it is our spirit wants to explore and experience this round. And furthermore, what I hear oftentimes from Spirit, again, countless times, I've lost track, that in the spirit world, there's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just an experience. And so it's almost like our cheering section in heaven is going, ooh, cool. How are they going to create out of this? What's going to happen? How are they going to, what good is going to come out of this? Because it's always benefiting us in some way. Furthermore, if we know what we don't want, it helps us create what we do want. So I want to explore that a little bit here going forward. Let's talk about the natal chart. What all do you need to know from a natal chart standpoint? You need, obviously, their birth date. What else do you need?
Their birth time and their birthplace. Yeah.
Okay. When I was born in the late 1950s, I was born in 59, some rocket scientists in Ohio, because I was born in Columbus, Ohio, decided we didn't need the birth time on the birth certificates. And my mother was gone already. She had already passed. So I asked my dad, who was still alive, I said, Dad, do you have any idea what time I was born? Because I wanted to have my chart done. And he said, I have no clue. I was in the waiting room with all 4 of you guys, fluorescent lights. I couldn't tell you. And so my astrologer, she said, okay, I said, well, I'll just call my mom's spirit in and ask her.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and I came up with a time. She told me a time, and she said, I'm going to send you a series of questions and let me know if these events or a semblance of these events happened in these years around this time. Every one of them was on the money. Every one of them. She nailed. So my mom said, like, I don't even remember, maybe it was like 6:31 in the evening or something. And so my gal, Mary, gave me boom, boom, boom. And it blew my mind. And I thought, okay, I'm pulling in from the spirit world. And so they've since, long time ago, put the birth time in there. But I thought that was an interesting component that I never thought of before because I'd never had a reading done. But, since I can talk to dead people, it was easy. I just called my mom in and said, hey, what time was I born? Why is that information so important? Why is it essential to have when you're doing an astrology reading?
So the birth time really decides your ascendant. And it's a very important point on an astrological natal chart. We call that your rising sign or your ascendant sign. And basically that's also decides how the 12 houses are located basically, on your chart. And so the time is really critical. It decides where the first house is, second house is, third house, and all those 12 houses are representing different areas in your life. And so without the accurate birth time, we cannot look at the house system, basically. Then we can only looking at the signs each planet is in. And also, to be honest, it's also difficult to decide where the moon is because the moon moves really fast. Right? So basically every 2.5 days, the moon will change sign. So let's say if your moon is around 15 degrees in the around the in the each zodiac sign, because each zodiac sign covers 30 degrees of the sky. Let's say your moon is around 15 degrees of Virgo, for example. Then the time might not be very critical because whether you're born in early morning or late night, the moon is not going to move out of the sign. So it might be as early as 5 degrees in Virgo or as late as maybe 25 degrees in Virgo. But if the day that you were born, the moon was around 28, 29 degrees in Virgo, then that's different. Because if you were born late night, then the moon might move out of that, the sign. The mind might have already progressed into Libra instead of staying in Virgo. So that's usually the reason why time is important, so that we can look at the moon's position as well as the ascendant. Those are quite critical information, to be honest, when we are casting a chart.
Where do you go to find out what degree the moon was in when somebody was born, if they were born 100 years ago? I mean, is that information available? Do astronomers put that together? How do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know that? How do you access that information?
Yeah. So there are actually there is a website. Yeah, I forgot the URL, but they have a lot of the famous, not people hundreds of years ago. Definitely, we wouldn't know that, but modern day famous people. Let's say, for example, I'm just gonna randomly give a name. Yeah, like Obama. His birth time is online, and you can just access Obama's. Barack Obama's birth time, and you can find it very easily online. And those information are public. And then it's very easy for us to cast a chart for Obama. His birthday is online. Then you look at his planets and his house allocation, you'd be like, that makes sense why he's doing what he's doing now.
Yeah, but how do you know where the planets were from a positional standpoint and where the moon was on his birthday? Is it in the same place at the same time every year?
No. Well, the sun is, not other planets. So there are softwares because the planets' movement there's rules there. For example, the moon will go around the Earth how fast, right? Let's say 28 to 29 days, right? 28 point something, yeah. So based on astronomy, you will know where the planets are in the sky because you can see it through telescope and through the math calculation. Right, you will know where it is. So in the ancient days, we didn't have softwares. So astrologers really had to be good at math because you will have to really calculate where the planets are in the sky. Where is Venus? Where is Mercury in the sky right now based on their orbit and their speed. But these days we have technology. So you don't really have to do the calculation by yourself. You can just use the software, and the system will calculate it for you.
Yeah. So you must be psychic too, because that was my next question. How did the ancient astrologers, because all the kings and popes and emperors and all those guys, they all had astrologers, and they would advise them on all kinds of things about their kingdoms. And, this is a good day to go into battle. This is not a good time to invade France if you're coming in from Scotland or wherever, and that kind of thing. And I always think of Merlin the magician.
Yeah.
Who
100%. Yes.
in
Yes.
King Arthur's court, right?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I think, okay, he wasn't accessing any software
No.
to get this information, but I have read about the ancient astrologers and how accurate they were, which is why all of the rulers had them, even in Jesus's time and way before that, pharaohs and all those guys had astrologers. And I find that fascinating. I believe that it's just a mechanism from spirit to guide us. It's all coming from spirit. It's all coming from source. And it's just a different methodology that we can use to help guide us on our paths.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And even, let's say, of course, kings and the queens, they would have, those astrological advisors, right? But even in the ancient days, right, we depended on the sky to decide when to plant the seeds, when to do farming, and when the river might flood, even look at the stars and decide to predict the weather. So it has always been with us.
Yeah. I got a question for you about the signs. I'm a Taurus. I'm a May baby, but I'm really close to the end of May. So people say, oh, you're right on the cusp with Gemini. What's that mean? I've never looked into it, but I've heard that. And what does that mean? I have Taurian, is that a word? Taurian
Yeah,
and
Taurian, yeah.
Geminian? Is that a word?
Well, not really, but I know what you
I just
mean.
made it up.
Yeah. The so-called you're Taurus, he is an Aries, she is a Gemini. Yeah, so I think maybe we can address that first. Basically, when we are saying you're a Taurus, we're saying on the day and at that very moment when you were born, where the sun was. And so when you say you're a Taurus, let's say the end of Taurus, basically we're saying, if you say you're born around the end of Taurus, we're talking about around 28 or 29 degrees in Taurus, yeah, because each zodiac sign covers 30 degrees of the sky. So you're basically saying right before the sun moves out of Taurus, right before it enters into the Gemini's, let's say the piece of the pizza, let's say. If you look at the sky as a pizza, then you cut that into 12 pieces. And so where the sun is moving, right, in. And we're really talking about the position of the solar energy, the sun. And so when, let's say if you were born around, May the 19th to 20th, right, basically the sun is around 28, 29 degrees in Taurus, that part of the sky. And when you were born, let's say you're born later, May the 22, 23, then the sun will leave Taurus and enter the part of the sky of Gemini. That's what it means.
Okay, so what does it mean that I'm a Taurus and I'm like almost a Gemini? What's that tell me about my personality?
It's a very high level question, actually, because we really have to look at the entire chart. There are billions of people who are Taurus. But you can't just look at the sun sign and say, okay, you're like this. There are many, many different reasons behind that. First of all, the so-called you are born on the cusp. Yeah, a lot of people misunderstand this as that means I'm both. I'm a Taurus and I'm also a Gemini. As an astrologer, we don't really see it that way. You're either a Taurus or a Gemini because the sun cannot be in the two areas at the same time. Either you are still in the area of Taurus, then it doesn't matter whether you're at 29.9 degrees, you are still a Taurus. And then the sun will move into Gemini. And that could be 0 degrees, 1 minute. But then that's Gemini.
Solved a lifelong mystery for me, Letao. Oh my gosh. So what you're also saying is that when I read my horoscope in the paper or in the back of a magazine, yeah, don't put a lot of don't put a lot of effort
Ah,
into following what they are.
mm, yes and no. The reason is because most people would read horoscope based on their sun sign. Let's say, for example, for you, your sun sign is Taurus, so naturally you will look at the Taurus section right on the magazine. But you have planets in other signs as well. Your sun sign in Taurus, maybe your moon sign is in Aquarius. And then where is your Venus? Your Venus might be in Gemini. And where is your Mercury? Your Mercury might be in the sign of Pisces. So you have to really look at their entire chart. Then you will know. Let's say maybe someone was born with most of their planets in Taurus. Then they definitely should go to the Taurus section because a lot of things would be related to Taurus energy in their life. But for someone who has a very scattered chart, let's say the planets are really scattered everywhere, then for those people, I would highly recommend that they look at three signs. They need to read their sun sign, they need to read their moon sign, and also they need to read their rising sign, or we call that the ascendant sign. So within an astrological prediction on a magazine, let's say, at least you need to look at three signs to understand a little bit more about what you're going through.
Well, that's why we need people like you, because this stuff's way above my pay grade. It's just, that's too much work for me. I'm like, okay, I want to read what's going to happen to Taurus in June and then go from there. I want it to be 2 minutes or less. Boom.
That's
But
why people
yeah,
need astrologers, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. You say, let's change directions a little bit. Thank you for the tutorial on all of this stuff,
You're
because I
welcome.
think most of us know these terms, but we don't know what the heck they really mean. I mean, we
Yeah,
know
yeah,
tarot's like
yeah,
cards,
yeah.
but we don't know the science and the nuances and that kind of
Mm,
thing around it. And
yeah,
again, I go back to, since the beginning of time, people have been
yeah.
reading the tea
Basically,
leaves and
yeah.
reading palm leaves and
Oh yeah,
reading palms
yeah.
on people's hands and reading the stars. And I understand why these eclipses really bothered and scared the ancient civilizations, because they had no frame of reference for it. They thought the gods were mad at them. And you would look at that and you say, oh, well, Taurus is in the 19th house on the whatever, whatever. And you know exactly what that means. Whereas people are afraid of what they don't understand. So that's why we need people like you. You describe astrology and card readings as beacons guiding us on our journeys. What does that mean? How do you use them as beacons?
Well, I see that. Well, basically, I think all these esoteric arts, right? Astrology, tarot, numerology, they're the source of wisdom. This is what I believe in. Yeah, I really believe that through looking at those symbolisms, through thousands of years of human experience, and basically what we're doing is we're trying to understand ourselves, and this is all what this is about. And only by understand the self, then you understand other people, understand the world that is going around us, right? And so the so-called beacon is, I see this as a little bit like a guidance, the guiding light, or the wisdom that we base on, yeah, to find answers. Either it's about ourselves or it's about the people around us. And during an astrological reading, and that's also as the professional what we are trying to bring forth with the clients.
Yeah, well, and I equate it also to just different methods to get to the same information. Like back in the day, we had numerals that were in the Western world. Well, in China and in a lot of Asia, they were using an abacus. But they
Yeah, yeah,
still were able to do the same mathematical equation, just in a different way, just a different format, but all saying the same thing. And I go back to, it's just another method that Spirit has provided to us, in addition to prayer and the woo-woo stuff that I do, and all of the world's great civilizations and cultures and religions all have ways to communicate with Spirit and to get guidance from Spirit. I see this as just another way to make that happen. What areas do you focus on and how does that help your clients?
You mean during a reading session or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, I think, again, this is case by case, right? Depending on what the client's purpose is. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, especially, let's say, at the very beginning of my career, was to be very client focused rather than the reader focused. Because at the end of the day, it's not a class. It's not about what I want to teach the clients, but it's about why the client is coming to me. And so the focus of the session, usually this is one question that I will definitely ask my client at the very beginning of the session. I'll ask them, why are you here? What are you trying to bring or take, away from this session? When you finish the session, when you walk away, what would you like to take from this session, right? And so some clients will say, oh, I'm just curious. I heard about you. My friend referred me to you. And so I just wanted to see what the fuss is about. And for some people, they really have very specific things they want to talk about. I have a box of tissue there because clients cry. Clients talk about the difficulties and the emotional challenges they go through, but they have no one to talk to. And so they choose to come to a spiritual counselor because what they need is they need they need a shoulder to cry on, but they're fed up with being stuck in that emotional state. They don't like where they are, and they have a sincere wish and a purpose to change, to make changes in their lives. And so it really depends on what the client is looking for. For clients who are seeing this more like a entertainment, right? It's my birthday, my friend bought this session for me. Yeah, so do your magic, entertain me. Sure, we'll focus on the session on how to make this session as entertaining as possible for you. But for most of the clients, especially for my practice is called the Healing Kingdom. So it's about therapy. And so for the clients, majority of the clients, what they're really looking for is therapy. And so then we will use astrology and tarot to really tap into their psychology and their past and to understand why they are where they are now and how we can make constructive advice, decisions, not for them, but more sort of like laying things out in front of them and ask them, what do you think? So a little bit like that, yeah.
Well, it seems to me that perhaps some of those clients, their lives that are less than optimal are the catalyst to push them forward to reach outside of the box, to talk to somebody like you or somebody like me. I talk to people all the time, especially on health things, that have been to many doctors and had many different diagnoses and treatment suggestions, and none of them have worked. And so they're just sick, literally, of feeling so poorly. And that's the catalyst for them to reach outside of the box, especially in the Western cultures with these types of methods. The work that I do from an energetic standpoint, the work that you're doing in some circles is still seen as, oh, really? You're going to go get advice from from somebody that's going to do your astrological chart, although it's in every magazine and every newspaper and has been used since the beginning of time. And the same thing with the people that are doing the energy work. So I find that fascinating. You say that you can access innate wisdom to help amplify a person's power and heart-based self-knowledge. Can you say more about that, please? And also give us perhaps an example or two of how you saw that materialize with a client?
So I think this part has a lot to do with my training as a counselor, right? I mean, when it comes to counseling, it's about, for me, the 80% of the counseling session, it's about building that therapeutic relationship with the client, and to create this very comfortable psychological environment for them to be able to share. Not just to share with me, but more important, I think, is to share with themselves. Because a lot of the clients actually are facing this challenge to acknowledge how they feel, or to really be able to face this is their issue, or this is the thing that they have been denying, their whole life. And so it's more about creating this comfortable environment for them to be able to say to themselves that it's okay that I acknowledge it, and it's okay that I have been like this, and I don't like being this. And so I think astrology, tarot, all these kind of things will be able to provide us sort of like a structure there. Sometimes it can even be used as a diagnosis, right? So for a doctor, they might use a machine, right? A MRI, whatever, to diagnose whether you have a kidney stone or not. But in what we do, right, we're using astrology and tarot to do that diagnosis. But then when we really go into the therapeutic part, the healing part, then a lot has to do with the method that we learn in grad school. So for example, our cognitive behavior therapy, ACT, sometimes it's about mindfulness, all these kind of different techniques that we bring to the session. And so that the clients will also understand that I'm not seeing a fortune teller. I'm actually doing therapy now, but it's just in a different way. And so this is where I find the value in my session, that we're not predicting your future. We're using those ancient wisdoms to look at your life. But the most important thing is, how are you willing to go through your healing journey? And let's discuss that. And let's make action plans. Or do we need more time for you to go through the acknowledgement phase, and then we can start the healing, et cetera, et cetera.
I had a client this morning. It's interesting that we're having this discussion because she was pretty ill and had a lot of stuff going on, and I was getting information to her that was very different from what her doctors were telling her, but she'd been suffering with these symptoms for over a decade. And there's always, I find, an emotional component to every kind of health condition. And it's always in place before the body manifests illness or disease. And she had a situation where she was being taken advantage of by colleagues. And she was paying everything, and they weren't living up to what their responsibilities were. And that came out because that's what I got from spirit. And I said, I get this information downloaded into my head. I call those divine downloads. I know you're getting them too when you're working with your clients. And I said, well, it seems to me that perhaps you're feeling taken advantage of and feeling not respected and all that. She burst into tears.
Dang.
And she said, I know in my heart that's the root cause, and I don't know what to do about it. And I said, well, that's why all these medical symptoms are manifesting and sticking around, because you've chosen not to do anything about this situation that's an emotional one. And it sounds to me like you're doing the same thing with your clients, some of whom I assume come to you and they've had perhaps some medical stuff going on, as well as financial and personal and all of that.
Yeah.
And then you can help them pinpoint. Am I understanding that correctly?
100%, yeah. And so this is also to deal with the chakra system, right? So which chakra is blocked actually in our this is earlier, I think at the very beginning of our chat, right? I mentioned one thing. I said astrology is all about as above, so below, as within, so without. So whatever the client's physical symptoms is, right? This is related to what is actually going through inside them, in their feelings and in their mind. So they are all connected. What is happening inside there, it shows as a symptom outside. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. A couple more questions as we're winding down. Are we all destined on our life's path? And if so, what is and how does free will come into play?
So yes and no. Yes and no. I think
that's a political answer,
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's true, right? I mean, I think the soul journey is already there. Yeah, for us, this is the reason why we came to this world. And in astrology, we usually look at this thing called the north node of the moon and also the south node of the moon, which is talking about the path that we're supposed to walk, from our past life. and through this lifetime, and how do we walk into the future? And because the node of the moon is all talking about fate and talking about the karmic connections between the past and the future. And that's a very interesting topic in astrology. We won't go to the details about that. So that's the fate. So that's the thing that is already predestined. But the so-called free will, it's a little bit more like how, so the seed is already planted, and how do you want to grow your tree? I think that if you're growing an apple seed into the ground, you cannot grow bananas there, right? It's going to be apple. But through your free will, your dedication, and your techniques, you might grow it much better than other people. You might be able to avoid different mistakes. You will know when to water them, when to nourish them. You know when to trim them, and in what season you need to do what. And so I think that's the free will.
Great answer. It's been my experience that when we come in, we have several scripts of things that we want to explore and experience, and they're basic, like you come in and you want to be a teacher. Well, in your past lives, maybe you were a teacher in a bunch of different incarnations in a bunch of different ways. And even in this lifetime, you're a teacher in a bunch of different ways. Maybe you're a teacher as a parent, you're a teacher in a classroom, you're a teacher in a business, you're a teacher in a whatever. But it's all that basic script. And then free will allows us to explore and experience things that have that basic script in mind, keeping always at the forefront that in the spirit world, there's no right or wrong, no good or bad. It's just an experience. And so each time we experience something, our spirit expands, our soul. I use soul and spirit to mean the same thing. It expands. And to your point earlier, when we first started this conversation, you said everybody's life is of value. They're exploring something. And each one, here's how I think about it. See if this resonates with you. Every moment in a person's life, they experience something. It will be a one-time experience. It will be the only time that person experiences that situation in that lifetime. And yet that experience benefits all of mankind because it goes into the collective consciousness that we can access. Does that resonate with you?
100%. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, great. Last question. Why do we incarnate?
Again, this has to go back to what I said earlier about the node of the moon, right? And so the concept of that is to basically, when we talk about the previous life in astrology, we're talking about what we have already mastered in our previous life, and we bring certain talents and skills into our current lifetime. Yeah, and the purpose of reincarnation into this lifetime is because we need to learn new lessons. We might have been already very natural with certain things. Like, let's use an example that you gave earlier. Maybe someone was a teacher in their past life. Maybe they spend a lot of time with children, in let's say primary school, or in the States, I think you call them elementary school. Yeah. And in this lifetime, maybe they're just very natural with children because they already spend so much time talking to kids, talking to children in this classroom environment. But usually when we look at the node of the moon, we're saying, okay, this is what you have brought from your previous life. But in this lifetime, you can still take advantage of this skill. You can use that. You can fall back on that. But there has to be new lessons for you to learn. So if you're doing exactly the same thing as your previous life, a very common feeling you will have, especially if you do it for too many years, you'll realize that, can I do it? Yes, I can. Am I good at doing that? Yes, I am. But something is lacking. I'm not fulfilled. I'm very good at doing that. I can just close my eyes. I can do that. But I want more. This is not fulfilling me enough. And that's a very common feeling that we talk about, in this the node of the moon lessons there. So I believe that the so-called reincarnation is about continue to develop the things that we never mastered. But sometimes we do need to, with the help with our previous life, the treasure that we have already built. So for example, I'll just use a very quick example. Yeah, let's say someone's south node is in Leo and their north node is in Aquarius. Yeah, 180 degrees opposing away from each other. Leo is about creativity. So a lot of people who have south node in Leo in their previous life, we see them as maybe they were artists, maybe they were singers, maybe they had a lot of talent in the artistic endeavor, right? So I noticed that a lot of people born with a birth chart where their south node is in Leo, it's naturally they're creative. They like singing, they like dancing, they like painting, all these kind of creative things. But because their north node is in Aquarius, their lifetime is the lesson, their incarnation is not about becoming an artist, but they can use their artistic talent to reach the Aquarius energy. And the so-called Aquarius purpose is about humanitarianism, it's charity, it's group. So if I can use a specific example, let's say if the singer singing in the center of the stage is the Leo energy, then the Aquarius is your audience. The thousands of people standing there watching you and clapping for you, that's the Aquarius energy. So for example, for Leo South Node, Aquarius North Node people, the biggest thing that they need to achieve in their lifetime is not about, I want to become an artist, but it's more about how do I contribute to the thousands of people out there using my artistic talent. So that's usually how we, when we study astrology, we see these correlations between these opposing energies and how do they bring from the south to the north of their life purpose. And I believe that's the reason why we incarnate.
Interesting. Yeah. You're a fascinating guy. My goodness. Wow. Wow. I've learned a lot from you. I know everybody that's going to hear this and watch it is going to learn a lot as well. And I find it fascinating in particular that you're combining the psychological counseling with the ancient methodologies of tarot and astrology and also the numerology, which, my goodness, I don't even know when they originated. But what an interesting combo platter you're offering people with this combination of these different modalities to help them really live more joyful, purposeful lives. So kudos to you, my man. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
How can people learn more about you and your work?
So they can find me through my official website, is www.thehealingkingdom.com. Or I think a lot of people use Instagram these days. I have an official Instagram account, which is just my name, Letao Wang, LetaoWang.
All righty. Well, thanks for that. We'll put that in all the show notes. So everybody, that's it for today. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Hong Kong, too, where Letao is. Go back to bed. Sweet dreams. Thank you for joining us in the middle of the night, way beyond the call of duty, and so appreciated. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.